Erectile dysfunction, ED, is a problem that affects millions of men. The older you are, the more likely it is that you'll experience it. The problem, of course, is knowing when ED is an actual problem, and when you're just experiencing a temporary glitch in your anatomy. It's no secret, men are pretty attached to their penises, so when something goes wrong and you can't get it up on demand, most men's minds immediately go to the worst-case scenario. The good news is, that's usually not the case. For instance, if you enjoy a good drink, whiskey, bourbon, beer, or whatever your poison of choice is, that might put you in the mood, but at the end of the day, alcohol is a poison, and if you drink too much of it, you'll find that your body won't cooperate when it's time for some fun between the sheets, no matter how horny you might feel. If you smoke, and try to have sex shortly thereafter, you also run the risk of having performance problems. In this particular case, it's because nicotine constricts your blood vessels, which translates into lower blood flow. Your penis relies on good blood flow to get, and stay, hard. Anything that interferes with that blood flow is going to work against you. Sometimes it's just a simple case of performance anxiety, and let's be honest, we've all been there at one time or another, especially if we're undressing a drop-dead gorgeous woman. The hotter she is, the more likely we are to start thinking some variation of what the hell is this goddess of a woman doing with me? And of course, once that little seed gets planted in our big head, the little head starts getting nervous. One thing leads to another, and before you know it, it's embarrassing, it's awkward, but it happens. That's not ED though. That's just nerves. At other times, it's not so much your body that gets the better of you, but life in general. Again, this is not new or news to anyone, and everybody has experienced this at one time or another. Things are tough and frustrating at work. You're putting in long hours, the boss is on your case constantly, and you've got big, important deadlines looming. All of that can take so much of your time, attention, and energy that by the time you finally get home at night, sex is about the last thing on your mind. It's hard to put in a 5-star performance in the sack with work stuff looming over you like that. Sometimes, it's hard to put in any kind of performance at all. Stress kills, sure, but long before it turns fatal, it can wreck your sex life. Depression is the same way. If the weight of the world has you down, not only are you a lot less likely to think about sex during the course of a given day. Remember, the average male thinks about sex 30 times a day, but when it comes time to perform, you may or may not be able to even get hard. Even if you succeed, you may or may not be able to maintain your erection for very long, depending on how depressed you are. In exactly none of these cases though, is the problem ED. These are all situational causes of sexual dysfunction, and while they're embarrassing, these kinds of problems are easily fixed. Don't smoke for a couple of hours before having sex, or better yet, give it up altogether. Limit or eliminate your intake of alcohol. Take time to distress and decompress. The key, defining characteristic of ED is different from all of these, however. Erectile dysfunction is a chronic condition. It's not something that crops up only once in a while, or only in certain fairly specific situations, but rather, it's a continuous, ongoing issue with getting and keeping an erection. All that to say, while it's natural to jump to conclusions and let your imagination run away with you, don't assume the worst just because you have an occasional problem getting or keeping an erection. Every male experiences those kinds of problems once in a while, and when it happens to you, sit down and really think about your day, especially the hours just before you try to have sex. Odds are good that you'll identify the culprit, and you'll find that it's pretty easily remedied. This is not to say that you should completely ignore or write off even sporadic problems with your erections. Definitely make note of them and keep track, because you could be seeing the leading edge of a long-term trend which really could point to ED. Just don't panic the very first time you have trouble in that department. It could be all in your head, or rather, your big head could be sabotaging your little head.